Imagine a man so trusted by Heinrich Himmler that he rose to control Germany's entire detective force. Yet in the final desperate year of the war, his name appeared on a list that would seal his fate: the conspirators who dared to kill Adolf Hitler. How does someone climb to the very top of the Nazi police machine only to turn against the monster he helped create? This is the haunting story of Arthur Nebe, the detective who became a mass murderer and the traitor who paid the ultimate price. Arthur Nebe was born in Berlin on a cold November day in 1894. The son of a schoolteacher in a typical middle-class family, he grew up in an era when Prussia valued one thing above all else: discipline. Young men were taught to obey without question, to respect authority without doubt, and to serve their country without hesitation. When the Great War erupted in August 1914, 20-year-old Nebe didn't wait to be called up. He volunteered immediately, joining the 17th Pioneer Battalion and heading straight for the trenches of the Western Front. War changed him forever. Twice he was caught in poison gas attacks, choking and burning as the invisible killer swept over his position. He survived, but the scars ran deeper than his lungs. They marked his soul. Yet instead of questioning the system that sent him into hell, Nebe emerged believing even more strongly in order, in hierarchy, in the iron discipline that had kept him alive. These values would shape everything that came next. When the guns finally fell silent in November 1918, Nebe returned home to a Germany he barely recognized. The Kaiser had fled. Revolution was in the streets, and the new Weimar Republic seemed to be falling apart before it even began. Communists fought nationalists in bloody street battles. The economy was collapsing, and the police, caught in the middle of the chaos, struggled just to maintain control. In 1920, Nebe joined the Berlin Criminal Police, the Kriminalpolizei, determined to bring order back to his shattered city. He was good at it, really good. Within just 4 years, he'd been promoted to police commissioner, recognized by everyone as smart, efficient, and completely dedicated to his work. But his colleagues also noticed something else about him. Nebe was cold, distant, more comfortable analyzing reports and studying crime statistics than dealing with actual people on the street. He was a bureaucrat's detective, a man who saw crime as numbers on a page rather than human tragedy. Throughout the chaotic 1920s, as Germany lurched from one crisis to another, hyperinflation that made money worthless, unemployment that left millions desperate, political extremism that threatened to tear the country apart, Nebe's career kept climbing. The criminal police were modernizing rapidly, embracing cutting-edge techniques like fingerprinting, forensic science, and centralized record-keeping that could track criminals across the entire nation. This was Nebe's world, where logic and systems could solve any problem, where order could be imposed through careful planning and meticulous documentation. But the constant chaos around him, the sense that Germany was spiraling out of control, pushed him toward darker political views. Like many frustrated civil servants who watched the Republic stumble from crisis to crisis, Nebe began to believe that maybe democracy wasn't the answer. Maybe what Germany needed was a strong hand, an iron fist to restore order and crush the communist threat that seemed to lurk around every corner. On July 1st, 1931, Arthur Nebe made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He joined the Nazi Party, and shortly after, the SS. At that moment, Hitler wasn't even in power yet, still just a loud voice promising to make Germany great again. But Nebe, ever the calculating careerist, saw which way the wind was blowing. He understood that the Nazis represented opportunity, a movement that promised the order and stability he craved, and that could secure his future in ways the dying republic never could. he became something extremely valuable, a bridge between Berlin's police force and the rising Nazi movement, secretly passing information about investigations, helping coordinate with party activists, making himself indispensable to both sides. It was conviction mixed with cold calculation, belief blended with raw ambition. When Adolf Hitler finally seized power on January 30th, 1933, Nebe was already perfectly positioned inside the system, ready to help the Nazis take complete control of the police force he'd served for over a decade. The transformation happened fast, brutally fast. Nebe enthusiastically supported the purge of anyone considered politically unreliable. Socialists, communists, Jews, anyone who might oppose the new regime was driven out of the police, or worse. He helped reorganize entire departments under Nazi control, ensuring that the police would serve the party, not the law. By the end of that first year, Nebe had become one of Heinrich Himmler's most trusted lieutenants in the rapidly expanding security network that was taking over Germany. The independent Berlin detective who once investigated ordinary crimes was now helping build something unprecedented, a new kind of police state where law enforcement and Nazi ideology were one and the same, where protecting public safety meant destroying anyone the regime considered an enemy. In less than 20 years, Arthur Nebe had traveled an extraordinary distance, from a shell-shocked soldier crawling through the mud of the Western Front to a rising star in the most terrifying police system the world had ever seen. The same qualities that defined him in youth, his discipline, his ambition, his absolute loyalty to whoever held power, were about to carry him to heights of influence he could never have imagined, and into depths of evil that would stain his name forever. After the Nazis consolidated their grip on power in 1933, Nebe's star rose even higher. His reputation for getting things done, combined with his early loyalty to the party, paid off spectacularly. In 1935, he was handed control of the Prussian Landeskriminalamt, the central criminal police office for Germany's largest and most important state. But that was just the beginning. A year later, in July 1936, Himmler and his ruthless deputy, Reinhard Heydrich, reorganized the entire security apparatus, merging the Gestapo, the intelligence service, and the criminal police into one massive organization, the Reich Main Security Office. And Nebe was placed at the very top of the Kripo, the National Detective Service, giving him control over every criminal investigation in the entire Third Reich. From this position of immense power, Nebe helped transform traditional detective work into something far more sinister. Under his direction, the definition of crime expanded dramatically. Now it wasn't just about catching murderers and thieves, it was about controlling society itself. Homeless people, sex workers, anyone labeled asocial or undesirable could be arrested and detained indefinitely. No trial needed. Jews, Roma, and Sinti people were placed under constant police surveillance, registered in databases as habitual criminals, even if they'd never committed any crime at all. These weren't just policy changes on paper. Nebe's office compiled massive amounts of data, detailed lists and records that would later make it easy to round people up, to know exactly where they lived, who their families were, where to find them when the deportations began. The line between public safety and racial persecution had completely disappeared, and Nebe was the man making it happen with bureaucratic precision. By 1939, Nebe's power reached beyond Germany's borders. He personally oversaw operations that identified and deported Roma families from Berlin, coordinated investigations targeting anyone the regime considered racially or politically dangerous, and helped build a surveillance system that reached into every corner of German life. That same year, His loyalty was rewarded with promotion to SS Gruppenführer and Lieutenant General of Police, placing him firmly in Himmler's inner circle of the SS elite. Yet even among these fanatics, Nebe stood apart. He wasn't a screaming ideologue. He didn't give wild speeches about racial purity or German destiny. He was methodical, bureaucratic, outwardly calm and reserved. The kind of man who measured atrocities in spreadsheets and filed reports on human suffering with the same detachment he might use for traffic statistics. One case in particular showed both Nebe's skill and the impossible position he occupied. On November 8, 1939, a bomb exploded at Munich's Burgerbräukeler beer hall just minutes after Hitler had left the building. An assassination attempt that came terrifyingly close to succeeding. Nebe was personally assigned to lead the investigation, and he tracked down the would-be killer, a quiet Swabian carpenter named Georg Elser, who had acted completely alone. Driven by his own conscience to try and stop the war he saw coming. Nebe's thorough interrogation concluded exactly that. Elser had no connections to British intelligence, no links to any organized resistance, just one man who tried to change history. But this finding infuriated Himmler, who desperately wanted to uncover a vast conspiracy he could crush. It was an early warning sign of the tightrope Nebe was walking, trying to do professional police work in a system that demanded political results, trying to serve the truth in a regime built on lies. Throughout the late 1930s, Nebe built a vast network of subordinates and expanded his influence across the police bureaucracy. But he also became increasingly entangled in the brutal politics of the SS, answering directly to Heydrich, whose cold efficiency and absolute ruthlessness set the standard for everyone beneath him. Nebe's Kripo became absolutely essential to the regime's control over everyday German life. Tracking criminals, yes, but also enforcing racial laws, feeding information into Gestapo and intelligence databases, helping identify anyone who might pose even the smallest threat to Nazi power. Historians still argue about what really drove him. Was it genuine belief in Nazi ideology, or was it pure ambition? A careerist who convinced himself he was just doing his job, just following orders, just trying to professionalize law enforcement even as it descended into state terror? The truth probably lies somewhere uncomfortable in between. Either way, by the time Germany launched its invasion of the Soviet Union in June 1941, Arthur Nebe was no longer just a detective. He had become a key figure in the SS command structure, about to take on an assignment that would reveal the true horror of the system he'd helped build. When Operation Barbarossa smashed into the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, Arthur Nebe volunteered for frontline duty and was given command of Einsatzgruppe B, one of 4 mobile security units that would follow the advancing German army deep into Soviet territory. These weren't combat units. They operated under the Reich Main Security Office, reporting directly to Reinhard Heydrich, with a mission described as securing the rear areas behind the Wehrmacht. But everyone involved knew what that really meant. These units had one primary purpose: to hunt down and eliminate Jews, communist officials, and anyone else the Nazi regime wanted dead. This was where ideology became murder on an industrial scale, where the careful bureaucratic systems Nebe had spent years building would be used to organize mass killing with horrifying efficiency. By early July 1941, Nebe had established his headquarters in Minsk, commanding roughly 655 men divided into 4 subordinate units, supported by local collaborators and police battalions who knew the territory and were often eager to help. His area of operations stretched from Vilna to Mogilev, to Smolensk and beyond, following the army as it pushed deeper into Soviet territory. The reports Nebe sent back to Berlin were chilling in their mundane bureaucracy. Neat tables of figures, statistics treated as casually as production quotas or supply inventories, as if they were documenting anything other than the systematic destruction of entire communities. A dispatch dated July 13, 1941, bearing Nebe's own signature, recorded massive security actions in Minsk and Vilna, using sanitized language to describe operations that left thousands dead. Under Nebe's direction, Einsatzgruppe B's operations became increasingly systematic throughout the summer and fall of 1941. By August, mass shootings had become routine, almost mundane in their regularity. But Nebe wasn't content with the existing methods. He wanted efficiency, wanted to find ways to kill more people faster, with less strain on his men. In Mogilev, he personally oversaw grotesque experiments, testing sealed vehicles where victims would be killed by their own vehicle's exhaust fumes. These tests would eventually evolve into the mobile gas vans deployed across occupied Europe, an innovation in murder that Nebe helped pioneer. By November 14, 1941, his unit reported approximately 45,000 people killed, though historians debate whether these numbers were accurate or even higher. The documents that survived the war show meticulous precision. The same careful record-keeping Nebe had applied to ordinary police work now applied to genocide. After the war, through intermediaries, Nebe would claim he'd exaggerated the numbers to convince Berlin the operations should end sooner, or that he'd tried to protect some subordinates from the worst assignments. Modern scholars have thoroughly examined these claims and almost universally rejected them. The surviving records portray a commander who implemented his orders efficiently, methodically, without any documented objection or hesitation. In October 1941, Nebe returned to Berlin, officially citing illness and administrative needs at the Kripo. He resumed his previous position as head of the Reich Criminal Police and maintained his rank as SS Lieutenant General. Historians still debate whether his departure from the Eastern Front reflected genuine moral discomfort with what he'd witnessed and participated in, or whether it was simply a routine reassignment, a rotation back to headquarters after several months of field duty. The truth probably lies somewhere between cold calculation and self-preservation. Nebe had seen firsthand what the SS was truly capable of, what rewards it offered and what horrors it demanded, and he'd made his choice about where he wanted to be for the rest of the war. Back in Berlin, Nebe slipped back into his role running the Reich Criminal Police Office, managing investigations, maintaining databases, coordinating with other branches of the security apparatus. In June 1942, he was even appointed president of the International Criminal Police Commission, the organization that would eventually become Interpol, representing Nazi Germany in international policing circles, giving the regime a veneer of professional legitimacy. To anyone looking from the outside, Nebe appeared every bit the loyal SS general, a trusted member of Himmler's inner circle, a man committed to the Nazi cause. But privately, something had shifted. His relationship with the regime, once built on ambition and ideological alignment, had begun to crack. By 1943, as Germany's military situation deteriorated and defeat began to seem possible, disillusionment spread through segments of the German elite, conservative officers, bureaucrats, and officials who had supported Hitler's rise, but now watched in horror as he led Germany toward destruction. Nebe's connections with these circles brought him into contact with men who would eventually form the conspiracy to assassinate Hitler. The July 20th plot. Among his acquaintances were resistance, figures like Hans Oster and members of the Beck-Goerdeler group, conservatives who believed killing Hitler was Germany's only hope for survival. Some conspirators saw Nebe as a potentially valuable ally precisely because of his control over the police apparatus. If the coup succeeded, having the head of the criminal police on their side would be crucial. Others deeply distrusted him, unable to forget what he'd done in the East, wondering if this was genuine conversion or just another calculating move by an opportunist sensing which way the wind was blowing. 1. Episode remains especially controversial in assessing Nebe's character during this period. In March 1944, 76 Allied prisoners of war executed the famous Great Escape from Stalag Luft III, tunneling out of the camp in a massive coordinated breakout. Hitler was furious when he learned about it, demanding revenge. When 73 of the escapees were recaptured, he personally ordered that 50 of them be executed as an example, a direct violation of the Geneva Conventions and a war crime by any standard. Nebe's office helped select which prisoners would be murdered, though historians still debate how personally involved he was in these decisions. Some argue this participation completely undermines any claim that Nebe had developed moral opposition to the regime. How could someone plotting against Hitler simultaneously help murder defenseless prisoners? Others see it as evidence of the impossible contradiction these men lived in, trying to balance conscience against survival inside a totalitarian system, forced to commit atrocities to maintain their cover while secretly planning rebellion. When the conspirators finally struck on July 20, 1944, planting a bomb at Hitler's military headquarters, everything went wrong. The bomb exploded but failed to kill Hitler, and within hours the Gestapo began a massive crackdown, hunting down everyone connected to the plot. Nebe's situation became immediately desperate. He'd been assigned to lead a special police unit that would arrest high-ranking Nazis once the coup succeeded. But that order never came. Instead, he found himself on the wrong side of the purge. In the chaotic aftermath, as arrests swept through Berlin and executions began, Nebe managed to escape initial detection and went into hiding. For months, he lived under assumed names, moving between rural safe houses, helped by sympathetic police colleagues who risked their own lives to shelter him. But in a regime built on betrayal and surveillance, no one could hide forever. In January 1945, with Soviet armies closing in on Berlin and the Third Reich collapsing around them, Nebe's luck finally ran out. One of his former mistresses, either under pressure or seeking favor with the Gestapo, revealed his hiding place. He was arrested on January 16, 1945, and thrown into Lehrterstrasse prison in Berlin. On March 2nd, he was brought before the infamous People's Court, presided over by Roland Freisler, the screaming judge who had already sent hundreds of accused conspirators to their deaths. The trial lasted mere minutes. Freisler denounced Nebe as a traitor to the Führer and the German people, and sentenced him to death immediately. On March 21, 1945, less than 2 months before Germany's final surrender, the sentence was carried out at Plötzensee prison in Berlin. Arthur Nebe was 50 years old. His body was never formally recorded, and his name quickly disappeared from official Nazi documents, as if the regime wanted to erase any memory that one of their most trusted policemen had turned against them. After the war ended, and the full horror of the Nazi regime became clear, some surviving resistance members tried to portray Nebe as a man who had experienced a genuine moral awakening, who had turned against the regime out of conscience and paid for it with his life. But post-war historians, armed with the documentary evidence that survived, painted a far darker and more complicated picture. Here was a career policeman who had eagerly joined the Nazi Party, who had risen through the system by enforcing its racial laws and building its surveillance apparatus, who had commanded a killing unit in the East and participated in mass murder, and who only joined the resistance when Germany's defeat had become virtually certain. Was his final act redemption for years of crimes? Or was it just one more calculated move by an opportunist trying to position himself for whatever came after Hitler? Did he die a hero or a war criminal who happened to be executed by his own side? The questions remain unresolved, and perhaps they always will be, because Arthur Nebe represents something profoundly uncomfortable. The bureaucrat who commits atrocities not out of fanatical belief, but out of ambition and careerism. The intelligent professional who puts his skills in service of evil because it seems like the smart career move. And the human capacity to compartmentalize, to do monstrous things, while telling yourself you're just doing your job, just following orders, just trying to survive in impossible circumstances. If you found this story insightful and disturbing in equal measure, make sure to watch What Happened to the Gestapo After World War II next. Another look at how the pillars of Nazi power faced their reckoning when the regime finally collapsed. Like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another episode of History Inside. Thanks for watching, and remember, the past isn't just history. It's a warning about what ordinary people are capable of when they stop questioning the systems they serve.